Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an excellent game to share with you from the 1970 Olympiad. On the white end, Bobby Fischer playing against William Hook. All right, on board, we have a French defense, variation, Winawer, and we get the typical pawn structure out of the Winawer. This one right here, damaged queenside. Black targets it right away. Some defense, and now queen a4. So what's up with this early queen maneuver to a4, early queen play? A few notes here. The a pawn can now not move. She's blockading in a way by going to a4. Why is this an idea? Well, white can no longer ever think about really getting the bishop on this diagonal for as long as the queen is blockading this pawn. White cannot activate the unopposed bishop in this way. She does have some lateral influence on this fourth rank. Another point, just in general being on the a file, this paves the way for black to exchange bad bishop for good bishop through the a6 square. One final note, this queen keeps the white queen honest. Queen has a responsibility now to defend c2. Do know that for as long as this c pawn is around, bishop d3 is not necessarily a convenient defense of c2. Black is only ever a moment away from giving that bishop a kick. All right, what is Fischer's approach to this queen post on a4? Well, he hits black where black is weak. Queen g4 says, you want to trade your dark square bishop for my knight and destroy my queen side? Well, I'm going to pinpoint the weakness on g7. No bishop around. How to handle this? Well, in the game it is king to f8, pretty much the standard reply here. To go uncastled, to allow the king to secure the pawn. The alternative to advance the pawn is super risky. To create two dark square weaknesses when your opponent has an unopposed dark square bishop, you're probably asking for some long-term problems. So it is king to f8. And from here, Fischer goes back home. He says, mission accomplished. I got you. You're uncastled. You can't castle anymore. Now, in 1974, some years later, William Hook had this same position against a grandmaster, and in that game, a game he won, in that game, white continued with rook a2 to defend c2, and then the king knight was deployed to its favorite square. Things are much different in this game in that Fischer's king knight doesn't go to f3. He has a different plan in mind. So let's see what that is. First, queen back home, b6, and now expansion here on the king side with h4, h5. Square has opened up for the rook, and h6 is pretty much a threat to punch a hole in f6, create a hole on this square. So black really should not allow this and does not. Plays h6 himself. And now rook to h4. So x-raying this queen post on a4. This here is not yet a threat because the rook would just hang, but once the rook is defended, this becomes a threat. From here, bishop a6, bishop takes bishop. Pop quiz. How would you recapture here? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, in the game it is knight takes bishop. It is better to take with the queen and just get off of this diagonal, or this rank. Even though this is not yet a threat, in just a moment it will be, and black will have to tend to that threat. Why did black maybe take with the knight? What's maybe a train of thought or two? Maybe it was viewed as a developing move. It's not really a well-developed piece. Maybe black wanted to quickly activate the rook. And also maybe black still wanted to keep this pawn in a pin for another for another move. At the end of the day, it would be better to take with the queen here. How it plays out in this game after knight takes bishop, Fischer goes in for this pressure on f7, and it hits pretty fast. He follows with rook f4, queen f3, and there you go. We see that pressure on f7. Now, if queen captures bishop was played in this position, and Fischer tried this same idea to form a battery towards f7, I want to show you what new move is available to black as a defense over f7. If rook f4 is played here, this is what black can do. The king can go back home and meet queen f3 with rook f8. Now, this looks extra passive, turtle mode here, babysitting f7, but it is a solid approach for black. What would be the follow-up plan for white in this situation? There isn't really a clear one. Target the g-pawn, the rook can step back over to defend. You develop the knight. What's your follow-up moves as white? I can tell you this much. Follow-up, easy. Follow-up moves to consider here for black. Develop the knight. Develop a rook. Focus on that weakness c4. Seems like it's clearer play for black in this position. How are things different in this game after this capture on a6 and the knight recapture? Well, notice after the move in the game here, rook f4, there is now not time for this plan of king e8 and rook f8, defending f7. Reason for this, if you play king e8 here, hang on, the rook is defended on f4. There would be pawn captures pawn. Your queen is in trouble. So king e8 is not a defense. This is not a defense in this case. The queen in this position goes back to d7. Queen f3 still. From here, knight c6 is played. Queen defends f7. Knight f5, not stable. Be kicked right away. So it is knight c6. And now where to go with the knight? Well, h3. Let's see what Fischer's plan is here. After knight h3, rook c8, it is to go with g4 and g5 pawn break. Now, this is where black starts to go wrong. He plays queen e8 here. What's the story with queen to e8? Well, he wants to maneuver the knight to e7, but playing this right now is going to obstruct the queen. He wants direct defense of this. He wants knight e7 into f5. The timing, as it turns out, is not quite right for this to be effective for black. Position will shortly crumble. What the computer has its eye on in this position, it says drop the knight back, allow the knight to defend, and open the rook's eyes. There's an idea now, at least, to chop on d4, chop on c2. All right, knight d8, not the play in this game. It is queen e8, in comes g5, knight e7. From here, pawn takes pawn, and black's reply is to take with the pawn. Fischer's response to that is to take advantage of the newly weakened f6 square. Here's the thing, though. Even if black takes on h6 with the rook and doesn't create a hole on f6, the rook can still go there. Pawn takes rook, bishop takes rook. Also, if the rook backs off here, this rook doesn't have to leave. The knight can improve here. If the rook is picked up here, this will be a disaster for black. Rook takes, queen takes rook is a threat. You move the rook, there's a mate in 1. Rook takes pawn here, there would be a mate in 2. With knight takes e6, pawn is pinned, and then queen g7 for mate. So, however you slice it in this position here, pawn takes, rook f6 is a fantastic follow-up. In this game, it's pawn takes, rook f6, and from here we see knight f5. Tries to interfere with this battery, release the pressure on f7. We'll see a flaw right away after that move. Here's something I questioned at this stage. What would happen if the knight goes to g8, targeting the rook? Here's how white could play this position. Castle, invite the last piece into the attack. If black takes the rook in this position, this here would be a disaster for black. Hitting the rook, the h6 pawn will next fall, and white's passed h pawn will fly. Now, if black tries to be a little clever at this moment here after castles and says, well, let me first put some pressure on f6. That way I could take, and if you're taking with the queen, we're exchanging queens. Here's the thing. The rook still doesn't have to move here. Knight f4 would be very strong in this position. Knight takes rook. We take with the pawn. If the queen moves, there's this fancy move, knight g6. Pawn takes, recapture. We'd have connected passers. Let me just quickly put that on. Look how scary that would be for Team Black. And if the queen takes on f6, well, here's the thing. The knight could still drop into this g6 square, and it does so not with the intention to next trade queens and then take the rook, simply getting the material back. Instead, the idea here would be to play bishop f4. This turns out to be an only move in this situation. This preserves the queens and has an eye on winning the queen, bishop e5. Knight is, take the knight, there's going to be bishop to e5 here. So queen's still on board, these three pieces still around. This king is in some serious hot water. Queen f5 in this position, there's knight e7 with a fork. Winning, in short, here for white, if the queens are still going to be on board. All right, black's try in this game is not with this knight returning to g8. It is knight f5. And after knight f4, there is just one too many threats. 3 threats. This pawn is pinned. So this is a threat. This is a threat, taking advantage of the pin. And there's a threat to take on d5. This pawn here is overloaded. 2 jobs. Watching the knight, watching over the pawn. Black gets out of the pin in this game. Knight takes d5 hits. Follow up king to d8. If you take the knight, queen takes knight, the attack will continue. In this game, king g8 it is. And there is no rush here playing as white. There's more than one winning approach. You could go for an exchange sacrifice, but it's unnecessary. There's no, not even a shadow of an attack against the white king. White has all day to simply say, what is black's best piece, and how can I get rid of it? This guy here, black's best piece. The move in this game, challenge it. Knight e3 it is. You don't have to invest. You don't have to go for an exchange sacrifice. So we get that exchange. Black has absolutely nothing at this stage. This knight scratching its head. What am I doing here? All right, some defense over f7. Chop on c5. Activate that last piece. Doesn't matter. Queenside castles, rook d1. Completely crushing attack at this stage. In the game, king e7. King c8. Mate on the spot. King e7 in this one. Bishop takes knight check. Pawn takes. Pop quiz. How would you continue here? Feel free to pause the video. All right, final move of this game. Rook takes e6. Black resigns. This will be mate soon enough. 3 options here for black. If you take the rook in either way, we will have the same move. Queen f6. Mate. And if the king goes to f8, you could take the queen, but even better is, yet again, this queen f6 move. And from here, it's a mate in 2. Queen takes rook is a mate in 1. And there's also this idea to capture the queen, and after the recapture, pick your favorite major piece to sweep into d8 for mate. Finally, if queen takes rook here, there would be a mate in the following way, taking the rook, and then playing queen to d8. All right, in this one though, what do we have after rook takes e6, black resigns? So a nice little plan here out of this French Winawer with this queen on a4. This idea to go for the rook lift and this quick pressure on f7, not be so quick, in other words, to bring this knight to its favorite square. Keep this option open, forming a battery towards f7. Anyhow, what are your thoughts with this one? Feel free as usual to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.